is the true crime queen of primetime TV, and she has seen it all, from the O.J. saga to the Idaho killings, Diddy's disaster right now, and pretty much everything in between. She is the one and only Ashleigh Banfield, joining us today on 1 Degree of Scandalous. I am Tom Zenner. This is the one and only Kato.
Glad to be here.
Ashleigh, you've been in the game for so long here, so you deal with viewers, you deal with fans. Have you ever heard any other theory because I hear them, Kato hears them, yeah, they're loony usually. Have you ever heard anything regarding the O.J. saga about someone other than O.J. doing that made you go, maybe? Is that a possibility? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, I get letters a lot. I get emails a lot from people who have their theories and their hypothesis. They've accused his kids. I don't know that I've heard anything so far flung that I just sort of thought, where are you getting this? But I'm usually pretty aware of testimony, and after going through 9 months of a trial, I'm pretty solid on this one. I hate using the term slam dunk, but I always say it's the slam dunk that wasn't the O.J. case.
Yeah, and it was the most investigated case in the history of cases. Tom Lynn could tell you, over 150 detectives. Now, I met someone, a Canadian Royal Mountie Police, and you probably know him. His name is William Deere. He wrote the book about, it was called O.J. Did It, But Not Murder, and it was his theory about his son. It's a book that came out, so he had a dinner, and I said, well, you can have your theories and all that. I just think myself personally, O.J. is the guilty one. O.J. is the only person. And
he also has the history, right? Honestly, yeah. He has the history of domestic violence, brutal domestic violence. You could hear Nicole's terror in the 911 calls prior to the murder. And so it's not a massive leap, right?
Yeah. So what I get these like you do. I had people putting notes under my door. It's scary to know where they know where you live. Everybody had a theory, and everybody wants to be connected to it. Everybody wants their theory, yeah. And everybody has a story of, I once met O.J., and I'll hear it every time I travel, and I travel a lot. I will hear a story every day of someone that has a connection, that wants to be connected to. I think they want to feel like they're part of I guess history, but want to be part of a crime of, I have my O.J. story, and everybody has, or someone connected to it, and it just, yes. But that's fine. But everybody wants to have a connection.
But everybody is either directly or indirectly connected to it. That's our age, or in their 40s, because they watched it on TV, because it was all around us for over almost 2 years. So we do have a connection to it, and everybody can relate to it. Let me go around.
Tom, that is such a great point. I got to tell you, you nailed that. You absolutely nailed that. Television has brought people together for a shared experience. Whether you watched MASH and Gilligan's Island as a kid, and you could talk to anybody about it because everyone watched it, right. Or whether it was the O.J. trial, and it does make you a part of it in a very weird, tangential way. And then when they meet someone who really is part of it, like Kato, it's just like the experience of a lifetime. It's like meeting your long lost brother, and they just want to, bring that forth, Yeah,
because there's only so many moments in life that are stamped for people. 9/11, of course, which you were part of, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. But, for older generation, it's JFK's death. Yeah. It might be Pearl Harbor for people back in the day. For me, the Bronco chase, the verdict. And I also remember hearing the news that Nicole was killed for the first time. I remember exactly where I was.
That's a where you were moment.
Yeah, exactly. Where you were. And television and media played such a big part of it, because back then it was so powerful and so glamorous. Here, let me go around the room.
That's why there's that expression. Where were you when? Because it's the shared experience that we all want to say, well, this was my part and this was your part. Where were you when? I don't know that many people did that before television, said that before television.
You know what? I'm going to go to you, Kato and Ashleigh, and I want to ask our viewers and listeners right now to maybe jump on the community page or go into the comments. The one thing that made you realize, there's no way somebody else other than O.J. could have done this. I'll tell you a couple of mine. The bloody thumb. He never had an explanation for that. And according to Tom Lang, and he's told us on this show how it changed, the bloody finger, how it changed multiple times. Dude, you're your hand's bleeding. You know what happened. How does it change stories? The other thing, too, not asking about his kids when Tom Lang called him and told him that his ex-wife was dead.
And he didn't ask about the kids, right?
Yeah.
Tom explained that story. It just kind of blows you away.
And, you know, as much as a sociopath, a narcissist as he is, he would have ratted somebody out if he knew who else did it. I think he would have thrown someone out of the bus. I don't think he would have kept this secret for 30-some years.
Right.
I think for me, you know, apart from everything, right, just this immense mountain of evidence, the sock, the glove, everything, the blood in the car. I think that along with that thumb, there is a trail of blood down the left. I'm pretty sure it's the left-hand side of the path leaving the murder scene. So there's drops of blood all the way along, and then his left hand was the one that was cut. Isn't that right? Was it left? I'm pretty sure it was left.
Yeah, I think
so. And on the gate, right. So the trail of his own blood on the left side plus on the gate, that one for me was pretty solid again.
You know what? Mine is there's so many. I can't pinpoint it, but I just have nightmare dreams of just remembering the night of it being this June gloom. And I felt in my body, I just felt something was off for that. And I don't know what it was. It was eclectic, just this feeling that something wasn't right the night with this gloom. And then I heard the footsteps of Arnell late at night, just on her high heels. And I couldn't go to sleep at night. And I was thinking about when the police came to the 4 detectives at my door. I didn't even ask. I just let these guys in when it was still dark outside. And I started thinking about, in my car, I had this moment where I kept a mannequin head, what they were thinking of when they're first, it was for my carpool lane. I had a business where I had to go to casting sets, and I'd always be in traffic, and I had a mannequin, and I'd prop it. This is true. And I asked Tom Lang that same story. When you guys are looking with a flashlight and you see a mannequin head, what they were thinking, and then through time and interviews, they came to, with, you know, how you were so eloquently put about my innocence, how I told them what it was for, and they just like, yeah, I get it.
Makes sense.
It makes sense with this kid, this guy.
Yeah.
And it just, with those moments, and I guess still having the house key, even though the house is torn down, I still have the house key to the guest house that I keep with me. And
do you have it framed or anything? Like,
I have it, a safety deposit box. And
we showed it on our first episode ever. So go back in our archives.
It's just a
on our
key,
YouTube
but I
channel
have,
to look at it.
I just have a key, and just bizarre.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
So many moments.
Ashleigh, you've covered a lot of, like, probably even serial killer trials. How many of them had mannequins in their car to use the express lane? There had to be at least a handful of them. Is there a trait about that I should be worried about sitting next to him this closely?
No.
Tell Ashley the name of her. What was the name?
Dolores.
Dolores. She was named Dolores.
A name?
Yeah.
Had a name. This is but you have to understand, before all this, I had a personality and a life. I used to have in my car also, for a joke, to meet people, one of those, rotary phones with the long cord. That's when cell phones were being popular, so I may believe I had my own car phone. I was a goof,
oh my God.
But it's true stuff.
Do you know back then also, because cell phones were just coming out and it was a mark of like you said, you wanted to impress people. They used to sell, because you used to have a little antenna on the back of your your window for the cell phone, for the car phone, we called it phone, for the car phone to work. And they used to sell the little antenna as a phony, and you could just put it on your window in the back of the car. And so many people bought those and put them on their car to make it look like they had car phones.
I remember I used to tell people I let the car phone ring 4 or 5 times so they thought I had a really big car.
Or else he was making out with Dolores. Who knows? One of the two. Anyway. All right. Busy news network anchors have meetings they have to prep for, so we don't want to keep Ashleigh too long because she's got a show tonight on prime time, 10 o'clock Eastern on News Nation. So let's get into a few other things.
I want to ask a question. So I've gotten a call or two about this Moscow, Idaho, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be a huge trial because of the youth that lost their life in the prime of their life. And I'm sure this is really intriguing. I am blown away, and I think it's true from what I read. The 2 people that survived didn't make a phone call for 11 hours. And we don't know what's going to happen with that. Why, if it was shock.
This is an easy one for me.
Oh, I want to hear I want to hear it from a level-headed person.
I'll tell you what. The conspiracy theorists have run amok about these kids. And it's so frustrating, right? Because if you, and this is another reason I don't think the house should have been torn down, because the dynamics at this house were very, very weird. It was built on a hill, okay? And then the main floor is the basement, and you could actually enter from the parking lot through the main floor in the basement. It's not even the main floor, it's the basement. And there's 2 bedrooms down there. Only one of them was occupied by Bethany. So then you go up the stairs and you're over now. So you're not even sharing the same floor anymore with the front, okay? The front and the basement are kind of their own building. And the next level is the main floor with the living room and the kitchen. And that's where Dylan's room, the other surviving roommate, and then also Ethan and Xana's room way over on the far end. They're on that second floor. And then go up the level again. And again, it's farther out and up. You're only sharing partially the same roof level and floor. And that's where the 2 girls were, Kaylee and Maddie, were up on the 3rd floor. So if you were on the main floor, like down on the basement, and you yelled as loud as you could, it's tricky to hear you on the 2nd floor, let alone the 3rd floor. So audio doesn't travel real easy between. So let's just get that out of the way, okay? If you were in Xana's room with Ethan, you might not hear yelling all the way over in Dylan's room. It's a zigzaggy route to get there, down a long hallway and around a corner. You might. You definitely would not hear Ethan and Xana from up in Maddie and Kaylee's room. So that alone. The other thing is, they're loaded. They're absolutely hammered. They've all been out partying. And I don't know about you, but when I was in college partying at 4 a.m., if I'm out, I'm out, right? Now, as a girl, I will also tell you, I lived in a house with 9 roommates. There were 9 of us, okay? I had no idea what everybody was up to. And there was all sorts of noise in the middle of the night. So for Dylan to wake up at kind of out of it, she'd been up at around 4 a.m. and then was going to sleep and hear something. I'm sure she's thinking, come on, guys, like now it's time to like settle it down. We're supposed to be sleeping. And she opens her door and she sees someone in black walking past her door to go out the kitchen door, which, by the way, she's in the most trafficked room in the house. Nobody else would ever in their rooms see people coming and going. Only Dylan had the room that everybody had to walk by to get out the kitchen door. And I think she may have very well thought, who the hell let the Uber Eats driver in the house? That is so unsafe for like someone like me. So slam, God, it's like a stranger. But it wouldn't be weird to see a stranger walk through your house because everybody has friends and you probably won't know. And my thinking is that was her fear. Not that someone just murdered all their friends. Who would go to that?
Yeah, you don't think that.
Okay.
You've been out partying. You're not thinking there's going to be a quadruple murder in my life tonight, you know? And she's thinking what is the first thing you would think of, which is who the hell let a dude in here to wander alone past my door, or who let the Uber Eats driver in?
And it was the party house. They've had parties before. It's like, oh, more people here to party.
Yeah.
So she's shocked and she's frozen. Like, there's a guy. Close the door. There's a guy. There's not a quadruple murderer.
Okay, I get it. Plus the layout of the house, a lot of that makes logical sense. All right, so there's one suspect. His name is Brian Koberger. Very interesting, creepy dude, strange background, trying to get his PhD in criminology at Washington State or whatever he was doing. You know, heading off to Pennsylvania after the murders, now comes up with this alibi that he likes to look at the stars at night. This thing seems so slam dunk. Are we missing anything? The spotlight's on this dude. It's clearly him, unless I don't know something. My fear is small town cops, evidence that could have been trampled on, not secured, and even the prosecutors. Are they sophisticated enough to handle what's going to transpire here with the media coverage and a powerful defense? What's your take?
I didn't think they were sophisticated enough at first. I thought it was really embarrassing, some of the moves that I saw. But in the end, they did connect the chain. The FBI got involved. I think they lent some really solid muscle to the case. And here's what we're missing, and this is important. We're missing the opening statements like Jose Baez made in Casey Anthony's case, which were like, What? What are you talking about? The baby drowned in the pool in the backyard. Where is this coming from? That's what we're missing. We don't know what Ann Taylor, Brian Kohberger's defense attorney, has up her sleeve. We don't know what her theory, hypothesis, what it's going to be. But I think if the prosecutors in the case don't overreach and try to go crazy with a big leap, then we should be okay. But I don't think there is a whole lot of leaping. There's so much evidence that we already know despite a gag order, right? Despite a gag order. There's so much we don't know. But the stuff we do is so strong. It's so incredibly strong.
Well, and I'll bring back to O.J. from 30 years ago, how the LAPD took a beating. I think every investigation, every cop detective goes, let's not have any kind of blame like they did 30 years ago with the O.J. trial. So I think they're very much in tune of what they need to do, and they are spot on not to be accused of like a planting blood, or not to step in, blood or footprints. I would think that every crime scene, they go back 30 years and go, we don't make mistakes. You would think.
But you would think. That's what's so amazing. Here's your trial, Kato, and it is the blueprint for how not to mess shit up, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And then I think they go about their jobs like we go about our jobs every day, right? We make little mistakes every day long, all day long, every day. We try not to make the mistakes that have been made before us, but we make them. And that happens in crime scenes. And by the way, defense cases that aren't strong beat the hell out of the investigators. That is what you do. You 100%, because all you're trying to do is just come up with some little nugget of doubt and hope that someone will think it's reasonable. Yeah.
And you said earlier, they tore the house down?
Yeah.
But I don't understand. How can they tear the house down? That's a crime scene.
It was a crime scene. They decided, and this was like really fraught. That it was a blight in the middle of a campus. Yeah. It was awful for the kids to live and walk and work. And, it really was right in the middle of university kind of fraternity row and everything. So it was hard to avoid it. And then the looky-loos, this is a crime tourism destination. So looky-loos were there at all times.
You know it.
And they weighed this battle, right? Like the investigators gave the university the imprimatur that it's okay. We've preserved everything digitally. We've done digital tours. We've done everything. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Nothing beats going to a crime scene and hearing and seeing for yourself. I
agree 100%. Well, they probably have models, because during the trial, you remember, the jury went to the homes. They went to the crime scene and they went to Rockingham, and it was a very big part of the trial.
But I also disagree with you guys. I think it's the right move. If they got all the evidence out of there, think about it. Everybody still comes to L.A. to go to Rockingham, to go to Bundy. The number of people that would flock out there just to get a glimpse of this. There's so many people fascinated with it. I don't know. Tough decision, but on a college campus, to always have to see where a lot of kids' friends and classmates were butchered, I have no problem with that thing being torn down if they got all the evidence.
It's going to get even bigger, though, when it's televised.
Here's the big question that I have. Motive. Okay, so you learn a little bit more about Kohberger, right? Do you know that he used to be fat? He lost 130 pounds. So my theory, or my speculation, is I bet he got picked on a lot. So is one of these, could a possible motive be he attacked these beautiful women out of, jealousy, whatever, the fact that he couldn't have a beautiful woman in the past? I also learned that he was a heroin user. So then robbery or needing drug money or something like that pops to my mind. What have you uncovered, and what's your theory?
Well, this is a tough one, because there's still a lot that we have to learn about what the prosecutors know. And one of the things that's come out till now is that he followed one or more of the roommates on social media and wasn't engaged with. Like, no one responded to his outreach. I think he might have DM'd them, but he followed them. I don't think he was blocked necessarily. I don't know that yet, but he followed them. And so it may have just been that if he's guilty of this, he couldn't get attention. He couldn't get a response from the beautiful girls and the party house that he so wanted to be a part of. It is odd, given the fact that it's not his campus. It's not where he is every day. So it's not as though he's got it constantly in his face that house doesn't want me, or those girls don't want me. But it may have just been the social media, rejection that spurred this idea into motion. Or honestly, Tom, this sounds crazy. Maybe it was just a doctoral student who who wanted to put his work to the test.
Well, I'm glad you said that point, because I was going to say, don't you think someone that's studying criminology wants to outsmart and become like, I'm going to have the perfect crime?
Well, if you're a psycho,
yeah, that's
because,
what I'm saying.
You know, that's not your typical laboratory.
But that's what I'm saying. A possibility that he said, I can prove that I can make the perfect crime. It's a possibility.
Well, that's why I think this is setting up to be one of the biggest scandals as far as what's going to create attention, drama, intrigue, and just suck people in. There's a lot of elements here on the surface, and we haven't even started it, that I think is going to be the next big thing. Like huge.
I think once we start hearing, like when this gag order is finally slashed open and we start to hear all of the actual evidence they have rather than just the affidavit stuff that was early in the investigation, I think things are going to probably start falling into place a lot more. I think there are probably things that the investigators have from the raid of his apartment, from the raid of his home.
Right.
He kept things. He kept things in Pennsylvania. And, you know, he had certain things in like trinket boxes. He had a piece of ID in a trinket box, and it's not necessarily an ID of the roommates. That hasn't been linked, but he kept things, and it is entirely possible he kept journals and all sorts of personal thoughts that will lead us into motive a little closer than where we are now.
Right, and being pulled over twice on this drive, just by the cops. Twice he got pulled over on the drive to Pennsylvania from Washington with his father in the car. His father has no idea. I don't think has any idea of this is my son that did this. But it's funny, Ashleigh, how images stay in your head. And it's because of TV and seeing on the internet. But the image already that's in my head is the girls that got murdered just being at that food truck. And I can relate to that of going to college and everybody go off for the pizza at 2 a.m. But there's that shot that they always show of them of them at a food truck living the best life they have. And no one knows that life is going to end in about 2 hours. It's just... you know, it gives me goosebumps right now. There's going to be so much, and everybody can watch you on News Nation talk about this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is distressing just to see the innocence lost so quickly, you know.
Two things before we let you go. One, we know that attorneys make a big difference in trials like this, high-profile cases. Ann Taylor, what's your initial thought on her? Can she sway this? Is she a powerhouse? Is that a factor that, you know, might make a difference here?
I'll tell you one thing. Well, a couple things about Ann Taylor. We don't know much about her, and that is a good thing. Clearly, Ann Taylor has no interest in being a big media celebrity because she has done zero to get herself out there, to even be seen walking in and out of court. I mean, this woman is all business, right? That is a very good thing for Bryan Kohberger, to have a lawyer who's just dedicated to the craft and the craft alone. And the focus that she has is just on the case. That's number one. The second thing that I've seen that I haven't seen in a lot of other cases is how incredibly meticulous she is about her motions. Like, she brings forth motions that I'm like, wait, what? Stuff I just haven't seen before. Like, she is truly throwing not just the spaghetti at the fridge, she's throwing the whole uncooked box and the pot and the handful of spaghetti at the fridge, because I think maybe that's all she's got. She literally has to try every single possible tiny angel hair strand of a defense in the unlikelihood that a juror will sort of say, oh, okay, well, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something maybe that's what the juror will think. Because like I said before, and this is the hardest part of justice, when you have 12 jurors, it's all about reasonable doubt. And think about the word reasonable for a minute, because what's reasonable to me maybe isn't reasonable to you, Tom. Right. Maybe it's not reasonable to you, Kato. Right. Maybe you let your kids drink at 20 and someone else lets them drink at 18 and someone else is like 21 in 4 days. So everybody has a different level of reasonableness, right? And on a jury, that's also what you get. Some people will be completely unreasonable to you, but to them, it's totally reasonable. Engineers will literally need to connect every dot. Do not ask them to jump over a 4 millimeter chasm, or they'll say, not reasonable. So that's what Ann Taylor's going to do. She's going to try to find that 4 millimeter chasm that every one of us will say, oh, come on, for God's sake, if P then Q. Whereas someone else might say, no, you didn't connect it, so I can't convict. That's the level of unreasonability or reasonability that you're.
Yeah. Well, Ann Taylor, defense attorney and clothing line. That's pretty amazing.
You knew that was coming.
You knew it was coming.
I knew that was coming, and I wear it.
Right. Her assistance is Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
Hey, real quickly, the walls are caving in on Diddy. Grand jury coming up. You know, the tape of the beating of his ex-girlfriend. Maybe that came out of one of these raids of his homes. Who knows? We're going to cover this big time. Idaho and the Diddy case, as are you, Ashleigh. Just let's end it with this. A year from now, is Diddy in prison?
Oh, I don't think he's in prison a year from now, but I think he's in a big world of hurt because, look, if you look at all domestic violence cases, and Kato, here we are talking, you know, we started this podcast with OJ and how I said it's not a great leap to go from the terror that Nicole went through in the 911 calls to eventually a murder. It's not a great leap. I look at that tape of what Diddy did that we saw with our own eyes. He's not convicted of it, but we saw it with our own eyes. What he did to Cassie in that hotel lobby. And I think that's not the first time. You don't start
without a doubt
abusing women with that. You start with something that's reactionary, like a hit, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry. Or with a kick, and I'm sorry, I can't believe I did that. And then you build yourself up to multiple blows. When someone is down and cowering and protecting themselves, you don't start that way. So my feeling, Tom, when you ask me a year from now, will he be in jail? Maybe he'll be in the process of bailing out, but I do believe that we will be looking at a litany of different charges so long as the statutes of limitations, and I say that plural, haven't expired. And that's the sad thing, is that for so much of this, you do have a shelf life to be able to bring charges. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be in and out of courtroom facing civil, threats from a lot of different people who finally say, you don't scare me anymore. You don't scare me anymore.
It's going to be a lot like the Harvey Weinstein. I think more people are going to start coming out, and maybe not just Diddy, with other people involved. You never know. And I don't know, does Diddy, he has a vodka? Is that all? Is that just,
Ciroc.
is that done?
Yeah, that was
done, right?
I don't think that deal is like the Ciroc deal.
No,
I think so. Yeah. Well, listen, if it's not done now.
Well, listen, he was trying to sue Diageo over it. He was trying to claim that they were racially biased in the promotion and whatnot. So that ended ugly. Now, he did make a lot of money with it beforehand. Our
great friends at Aura are sponsoring our show today, and we're getting a great response from all that have signed up with Aura.
I'm going to ask you guys to do something. Do a Google search of your name. Wait till you see what comes up. I've done it. Kato's done it. It's incredible what is out there. It really makes you feel uncomfortable to think what is out there and what is being sold on the dark web. I mean, this is real. This is a reality of the world we live in right now. Data brokers will sell your information to scammers, to spammers, and anyone else that may want to target you. Your full name, your health records, your home address, information about your relatives, it's all out there. And that's why I've been using Aura, and so has Kato. It's showing us what data brokers are finding and what they're selling out there. So cleaning up information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use that information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, any other sensitive information that's out there about you. We've got a special offer for you too. Go to aura.com/1degree. Aura.com/1degree. Sign up for a free 2-week trial and let them go to work for you right now. And I don't know if you heard the story about the big data breach with AT&T. Something like 73 million people were compromised.
Tom, I just got the letter in the mail yesterday, and the U.S. postage mail came to my door, and it's exactly saying that I was breached. Now, when I had AT&T, so I no longer have it, thank goodness. But yes, I was one of the people that was breached, and thank goodness for Aura.
Yep, and it does give you peace of mind. So if you want to make sure that your information is safe, let Aura do all the work for you and take advantage of our special offer, aura.com/1degree. Sign up for the free 2-week trial, and we also have the link in our description. Ashleigh, so great to see you. Prime time, new show. Well, not new anymore, but 10 o'clock Eastern on News Nation. The show looks great. It seems like a great home for you. How has that gone for you at News Nation? You've been at a lot of networks, but how are you liking your new home there?
It's good. It's good. It's amazing. It's completely hands off. I have a little team, and we produce our true crime program every night. And it's the only cable news network that's growing, which is really nice to hear. And, you know, at a time when everyone says television's dead, not for us. We're leaps and bounds.
Yeah. When I hear the name, you hear that it's just called Banfield. It's right. It's Banfield, and you immediately
it's
think,
easy.
yeah. But I immediately, you know, I honestly, goodness, and just checking out all the your resume of everything you've done. A question I have is, you've worked CNN, Court TV, ABC. In Canada, KFTW,
MSNBC as well.
Well, you've been everywhere. What is it like moving from place to place? And is it because you're offered something and you're like, you know what, I've done my gig here, I'm ready to move on? How is that for you? Like you have relationships and then you have to leave the relationship. It's sort of like a pro ball player. They leave their loyalty, but how do you do it?
Well, I used to think it was because I was like crappy. Like, why am I like, I should be at the same network for like 40 years. And then I started looking at like Barbara Walters and Connie Chung, and they'd actually moved networks as well. Sometimes it's because someone, you know, comes to you and makes a wonderful offer. And other times they're like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So it can be a grab bag of reasons why you move networks. And sometimes it's because you have babies and can't run around war zones anymore and things like that. But it's been pretty fascinating. Kato, what I think is the most interesting is how small the business really is. The listeners and viewers right now should know that before we went live, Kato and I were talking about someone he's talking to, and it's like, oh yeah, I worked with him in 2 different places. It's the smallest business in the world. No matter what network you're in, you're going to know somebody. You're going to know a lot of people at each network because there is so much movement between them.
And it's really all about relationships too. People that love you are always going to, you know, be on your side. And I imagine that many people, if anybody, could ever hate you. But I imagine
there's always 100%. There's always people for all different reasons, right? Sometimes you cross them because you don't do the work that they want you to do, or you don't accept the work that they provide to your show, or there are some professional jealousies. They're all, and you know, I'm sure that at times I've been a bit of a jackass too. So there's all sorts of reasons why people don't want you around, you know?
Well, the moves have worked out for you. We see some hardware in the background. That Emmy speaks for itself, and you've had a great career. Let's get into it, though, because I mentioned the bookend, you know, O.J. saga, which we're coming up on the 30-year anniversary, and we've covered every single angle of that here on the show, and we have big things planned in June. Now you got these 2 new scandals with Diddy, the Idaho murders, and there's always going to be more. You grew up in Canada. Where did the fascination for news, for breaking news, for true crime, where did it all come from?
You know, I'm super lucky it started really early, which reminds me, I should tell you right off the bat, I just literally launched a podcast called Drop Dead Serious, because I think I'm a bit of a goofball, but I am drop dead serious when it comes to these topics. I'm a little irreverent. Maybe it's the Canada, I don't know, but I am a little irreverent when I talk about things on the air, but I am drop dead serious about the topic. So that is my newest iteration alongside what I do at News Nation. But I think, honestly, Tom, at about age 14, the Beirut War was, or the Lebanon War was, you know, raging, and the Marines were murdered. And I remember watching the CBC every night, and these war correspondents doing this incredible work. It looked so dangerous and so exotic and so fascinating. And I did this calculation at age 14, not a word of a lie, in 9th grade. Wow, if I did that job, I could combine my love of travel, my love of current events. I could be a performer, which I naturally was. I could use my languages because I know they speak French all throughout the Middle East. And I could sort of do it all. I could combine everything in one career. And I never changed my mind. I never turned back.
Yeah, and your face is synonymous with breaking news, with big stories, 9/11, the work you did covering the war in Afghanistan, interviewing Taliban members. It's unbelievable. You're like a snapshot of history. But let me ask you this, because I was, you know, I'm about the same age, and I was in TV for a very long time, and I was lucky enough to be in Chicago on NBC as an anchor, sports anchor, covering the Bulls for their last 3 titles. How do you beat that? It's impossible the rest of your career in sports to cover anyone like Michael Jordan, follow that circus. What about you, Ashleigh? You were a young reporter starting out, and the O.J. saga happens, And there's never been anything bigger before that from 1994 and 95. There hasn't been anything that big since. Has it been kind of weird? And have you had a chance to really appreciate just how big that story was and how every day there was something new to chase?
Yeah. In fact, I think it's so interesting that, we're sitting here with Kato, because I'm an immigrant to this country and I arrived here September 1995. So wow. Guess who I met on television for the first time? It was you. And it was one of my first assignments with an American TV station down in Dallas, Texas. So my entree to this country, my entree to this culture, my entree to crime television reporting, really, for the most part. I had done crime television reporting in Canada, but very different. That was you, Kato, and it was right. The case, that you were involved in that changed your life and your trajectory forever. And I don't know about you, but when I look at certain crimes, I look at through the prism of the O.J. trial. I really do, because I saw justice, months and months of it, but I also saw justice at its best and worst, all in one fell swoop. And so it was such an amazing learning experience. And I can only imagine for you, it was an entirely different prism. You were on the other side of the glass. Yeah,
and I think I think the trial itself is the template for all trials, because anytime there's something that goes on with the trial, like with Idaho coming up in Moscow, Idaho, I get phone calls, for an opinion in that, and I try to stay away from it, but certain times I just say, oh, you know what? I have to accept it. Everybody knows me from that, and see what I can do. Yeah. And I sort of become my blueprint, and I give whatever it's worth my opinion of what it's like. Because
but you know what? You should, because you have an experience none of us has or likely ever will have. I dare say there is no other American that has the experience that you have had, and that you've then subsequently had to live with and deal with and sort of build your life around and adjacent to. And so your perspective, it's why I call you. It's why I call you all the time, is because you have a perspective no one else has.
Yeah, thank you. And also it's, I think it's important. People don't realize that when you are a witness in a trial, you should go to both sides, the defense, the prosecution. And then I didn't realize the fact that my life was going to become a public figure, and everything is released, and then people can pick their sides. Do I like this guy? Do I not like this guy? And then you start going, oh my God, they know everything about me because you're a public figure. But nothing to hide.
Can you for a minute imagine going through what you went through, but now add the age of the internet?
It's unfathomable, because I was, during that time, this is not me, I'm being humble, but things that were told to me being more popular than Al Gore, and during my testimony, Domino's never had bigger sales. And I was thinking, boy, if I just had a Twitter account back then and all that stuff, I would be like probably wealthy. But it's also it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's probably a good thing that it didn't happen. If I was,
everybody would have been around your home. You would have been doxxed. I mean,
yeah. Well, they were around my home.
Who knows what it would have been, right?
Yeah,
but it would have been really different.
Here, let me give my opinion on that too. It couldn't have turned into the phenomena that it is right now if there was social media back then. That was part of the mystery. The fact that it wasn't everything immediate. That big-time news anchors and reporters had to fish for everything every day. There was a mystery element about a Kato Kaelin, or a Tom Lang, or an Alan Park, or whoever else was involved in that. It would have been all ruined if there was social media, and the intimacy would have been gone. I think that's part of the reason, the confluence of events at the right time, at the right place, or the wrong place at the wrong time, however you want to define it. But that's all the mix, all the ingredients in this thing that made it a story that had never happened before and is impossible. It's impossible for a story to ever get to that level. Don't you think, Ashleigh, as someone who's covered everything?
I also think that Kato, just like looking back in retrospect to you and who you became to America and how you were delivered, to America, other than through the trial itself, I think that people hadn't maybe seen someone who was just genuinely delightful, behaving genuinely delightfully, right? And I think that we were used to people being so buttoned up, so Cronkitean, even in a courtroom. I mean, black suit, black tie would have been the only thing maybe we were really used to. And then along came you, and you just said, nah, this is me, you know? And I think it gave rise to sort of a new kind of authenticity that was acceptable. Do you know, I hope I'm making sense, because I think that up until then, everyone conformed to what society said you needed to be if you were thrust into a position like that. They might have been completely different people in their own lives, but they became just sort of, you know, blue-suited cardboard cutouts when they had to be in the public eye. You didn't. And everybody was just sort of like thrown sideways, and they ran with it, and in a bad way, but also in a great way. And I think it's served you so well. Well,
and I adding to that, the only thing was that I had never been in a courtroom in my life, and I think it was sort of the innocence and walking in to swear in and looking around, because I didn't know. I thought it was like a TV show with a Bible, and it was like, no, it's over there, and I'm looking around, and that you don't realize you're on camera with that, and then people probably in the audience watching out there going, who's this guy? He's looking around for this Bible, but it was pure innocence, and it was, like you said, it was me.
Authentic.
Yeah, very authentic.
Yeah, and at the time we didn't know how to digest it, right? Tom, think about this. You didn't know how to digest a real, like this was the first reality show, if you think about it. And Kato was the first star. I mean, other than OJ, I dare say, Kato, you are the biggest star to come out of the OJ trial.
Well, I guess star. I suppose so. But I look back on everything 30 years ago, and you think about what came out from this, and it really, believe it or not, it started the Kardashians. It really started the Kardashians. Yes. All the Kim, Khloe, Kourtney, they used to come by Nicole's place. There were kids at the time, and that was all part of that. And then it just, when I saw them as kids, I said, and met Chris, I said, they're going to be stars, I think, one day. This is before the trial. I just saw that. I saw that how they're sort of being prepped, and I was like, "Wow, this is really a beautiful family." And that's when Bruce was hitting off the men's tees, golfing. It's different now.
You know, it's amazing. It is amazing to hear the connection. There may be a lot of people watching this, Tom, that actually don't know that connection between the Kardashians and OJ. Lots of people do, obviously, but I think a younger generation might not know that Robert Kardashian was one of OJ's lead attorneys, you know.
And Ashleigh and Kato should have said to Kris Jenner when he said that, if you know, for that advice, how about 10% of everything for the next 30 years?
Right.
Don't you wish you had a time machine?
Yeah.
For so many reasons, right?
The other thing, jumping on the conversation that you two were having about Kato's authenticity that really came out, and that's why he became such a household name and lovable. But it's been interesting, Ashleigh, because people form these preconceived notions about him because of his appearance and his style and his personality and his attitude, and they wanted to not like you. And the funny thing that's happened through our podcast is how people are being open-minded about this new introduction to Kato and how much they love him. Because when you know him, it's impossible not to love him. But it's been funny because these preconceived notions have been burned into people's minds for so long, and that's what they had. That was their judgment, and now they see the real Kato. Plus, everybody had a chance to be really revealed in that trial too, because you don't have a lot of time to think too much or to form a strategy. And with that spotlight glaring, we learned who Kato was. We learned, who everybody else was. Maybe Marsha Clark couldn't handle the pressure, or Alan the limo driver,
Alan Park,
who was outstanding. He was just a thoughtful, smart guy that told the truth. So that thing just revealed so much on so many levels about people. And, we get the real Kato here on this show every week, though.
Yeah. So.
Well, and listen, Kato, the first time I interviewed you, I didn't know who to expect, right? And I remember we stretched the interview double. Live, like we were like, stretch, he's so great, and I remember just thinking that I had that epiphany, like, this guy's the real deal. He's just an honest, kind, authentic person who's just not prepared to conform to anything other than truth and himself. And I remember after the interview getting a lot of comments on, wow, I didn't know he was like that. I didn't know he was like, we love him, and that's what I get every time we do an interview now. The comments that we get are they're always so positive. Like, people just fall on you. You are this brand. Well, I'm glad, because I don't think you've had it so easy, you know, and it's super unfair that you haven't had it easy.
I think so. Well, in the 90s, like when media had repetition, they kept saying the same thing over about, you know, the freeloader or anything. I think it goes in someone's mind. Repetition makes you remember probably the worst things, and that's why I think kept repeating. And I just, there's no fight. I can't do anything about it. It's they have the power. I didn't. So I just kept being true to myself. But I always credit Mom and Dad. That's it. Raised with 6 kids, and everybody stays humble. And, you know, I think being from Wisconsin, I tell Tom, the cream always rises to the top. Maybe it took a long, long time, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't know you're from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm from a suburb of Milwaukee.
That's where we learned to surf. Hanging 10 on Lake Michigan.
Surf the web. That's it. Yes. Yeah, I'm a 100% cheesehead and a sports fanatic. Yeah.
Do you go back a lot? Like, you go back home to Wisconsin a lot?
Twice a year. I go back. My parents both have passed away, but my family's very large still. We have we go back for the cottage. I do snowmobiling in the winter and do jet skiing on the lake. So yeah.
Now I get it. Now I know why you and I are kindred spirits, because I also go back to my hinterland, which is central Canada, not that different from Wisconsin. Beautiful lake country, cottages, you know, and I go back as often as I can. I spend summers, and it's very family oriented. So now and snowmobile too. Listen, do you really call it a snowmobile, or do you call it a snow machine?
We call it a snowmobile. Yeah,
it's a snow machine.
I know it's a snow machine. Well, snow machine for us in Wisconsin is a snow blower. Same thing. I real quick, I'll go back to this, but we go back to the cottage up north, and nobody realizes it in California. And you'll appreciate this. No one realizes the beauty, what it's like, first of all, in the summertime on a cottage in a lake. It is... For me, it says America, and where I go up there, we see bald eagles everywhere nesting. And
everywhere.
It's... I'm going to go back
Slice
in
of Americana.
July. It's Americana. You're from Minnesota. We're Midwest guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how often, Kato, this might be really, really in the weeds here, but how often, pardon the pun, in the weeds, but how often do you just get out in the boat by yourself and you're cruising somewhere, and then you just pull her back and you just stop? And you're like, damn, you know, like, I do it all the time.
Oh, that's because Kato ran out of gas. Okay, it wasn't intentional.
Yes. When someone says Kato's got a small dinghy, I kind of go, what? No, I'm kidding. Hey, what are you saying? What do you know?
I do have to tell you this funny story, only because it's sort of applicable. My very first job ever at 15 years old was as a waitress. I did 6 years as waitress and bartender and everything. But my very first job as a 15-year-old was a coffee shop waitress. And it was at the lake, right? So because we're on an island, I have to take the boat to work. And I had an 18 horsepower stern drive little metal boat, right? I get up and my shift is at 6 a.m. And I'm an hour. By the time I get my 18 horsepower all the way into town, dock it, pull the gas line, and then walk to the coffee shop, it's going to be about an hour. So I get up real early and I leave the dock, and it's one of those beautiful mornings on the lake, right? There's just a little bit of a mist. It is dead calm. You can hear the loon. It's just incredible. And I'm like, oh, I love this place, but it's early. And I've got my little outfit on because I'm 15 and I'm about to start my first job in punch clock. And I get in the boat and I get about, 800 yards out. Ran out of gas. In the middle of the night at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I had to paddle all the way back home, find gas in the shed. And I'm like pouring gas. It's such a lake experience for those who grew up that way. I can relate to, and last thing I'll say is Evinrude Motors. Evinrude. That was it. It was an Evinrude. Evinrude's our neighbors. And they're out of Wisconsin. And I just remember their mailbox was an Evinrude shaped of a Evinrude motor. Oh, yeah. So that was their mailbox. An engine cover. Yes. Love it.
Hey, there's no question you've got tons of content coming up in the next year or so for the true crime queen that you are. Let's get a couple plugs in here right now. Weekdays, News Nation. I'm a big fan, you know, and I got to know a lot of the people there when in the early stages when they were launching in Chicago. Your show's based on the East Coast. Prime time, 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. All right.
We're live every night.
That element is cool. You got the best lit set. I just think the energy is outstanding. Tell us about the podcast, though, if you want to plug it.
Yeah. A lot of it's unscripted. I think the best television is unscripted. I think it's why Cuomo's really good too, because he's unscripted. So the energy is you're getting the real me. You're getting whatever's fomenting in the back of my head that moment. So
you can see your thoughts process and then come to the forefront. It's really interesting. Tell us about the
if
podcast.
I'm looking way up to the right, it's because I don't know what my next word is going to be. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And just the whole, honestly, when I was doing my interview with you, first of all, it's very difficult because I don't get to see you, and I see your energy now, and I just see you're wonderful. Honestly, really wonderful, and you're so easy to talk to. So, and Drop Dead Serious is coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a bit crazy. We're going to have to meet again about this because if you haven't heard of Peter Nygard yet, he is quite a person. He is sort of Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and Jeffrey Epstein. If you combine those guys, Peter's worse than them combined. And, Peter was a billionaire clothier, like the guy used to fly around on his private jets with his big name on them. And he had a 4-acre home that the house itself was 4 acres at the tip of Lyford Key in the Bahamas, worth like 30 to 60 million. And he's just a prolific rapist, probably one of the world's worst serial rapists. And to me, he's Uncle Peter.
Why?
Bit crazy. Well, I called him Uncle Peter growing up because I grew up with him. He's from Winnipeg, and he's my best friend's uncle. And so I spent all this time as a kid and a teenager with Uncle Peter. And I saw the origins of the man who is now sitting in a prison in Toronto, a jail in Toronto, awaiting sentencing, awaiting a trial in Montreal, awaiting a trial in Winnipeg, awaiting a trial in New York, and then awaiting 135 women in a class action suit against him. So my best friend growing up, Angela, sat with me for 9 hours recording everything about his early life and how it came to be and how she got sucked up in it as well because she worked for Nygard. So the very first iteration is a 6-part series on Uncle Peter Nygard from our perspectives and seeing what we saw and then her seeing everything later in life.
And so you grew up, you knew him as a child.
Yeah, he was Uncle Peter. I used to call him Uncle Peter.
Did anything, if you can, drop a hint, did anything happen as a small child with him trying to do? So
here's what's incredible. He never, ever put up any red flags around me or my mom. My mom knows him really well. She's in the podcast. He was actually incredible to us. He mentored my mom in business. He mentored my mom's dear friend was his sister, and he mentored her in business. And we never got any kind of weird feeling about being hit on. But I'll tell you what, we did think he was inappropriate. Like we just thought he was Hugh Hefner on steroids, but we didn't think anything was illegal. We just thought he was gross. Hugh Hefner was down in the Playboy Mansion being Hugh Hefner, surrounded by women in bikinis who were like the age of his granddaughter. And no one ever suggested we better raid the place and arrest him. It was just a playboy. If you were a playboy, it was a badge of honor. And so that's what Peter was to us. He was a playboy, badge of honor. This guy was revered by mostly men. And that's what we were just supposed to think was okay. Right. Men thought it was okay. And shut your mouth if you don't. You're a buzz killer if you don't.
And maybe that was the gateway, right? Maybe there's an evolution just like there is in drugs and other vices like that. And in this case, a horrible sexual assault.
You're untouchable and you're above the law. Maybe they think that.
You're untouchable and you're above. You nailed it, Kato. They think they're untouchable. They think they're above the law because they have so much money. They pay people off to be silent and terrorize them that if they don't accept the money, your life is going to be awful. And so they do. They really do. They believe it.
See, Tom, it's good to be broke.
Don't have those problems. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Make sure you check out Ashleigh every night on News Nation. Check out her new podcast. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Drop Dead Serious. DropDeadSerious.com.
You are so wonderful. Drop Dead Serious. You're so wonderful. We'll hit subscribe, and everybody else hit subscribe. And also hit subscribe to us, 1 Degree of Scandalous.
Yeah. Just a quick announcement for everybody following us and our show. Make sure you check us out in the car. Listen to this on audio as well.
Yeah.
everywhere you get your audio podcast. Sometimes you miss something when you watch the YouTube version. You go back and listen to it a couple more times, especially all the ground that we covered today with Ashleigh. Number 2, hit our community page on our YouTube channel. We're messaging you guys every single day. I'm giving you updates, behind the scenes photos, telling you what Kato ate for breakfast. It's not pretty. And then also,
the banana today.
I've got big announcements coming up about what's going on during the 30-year anniversary of the O.J. saga. It's June 12th through the 17th. We are doing something unique, special, and big. Keep coming back to the community channel and following us on social media. All right, so thank you, everybody, for the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for going and checking out all the old content on our channel. It's fun when that thing just takes off, and it has been lately, but we've got more scandal talk coming up.
You make me want to listen right now.
You're damn right, man. This is called a tease. I'm getting Ashleigh fired up for the rest of her day. Make sure you check her out tonight at 10 o'clock on News Nation, the best lit set on network television. The most experienced true crime reporter, opinionated. A lot of the stuff happens right on the fly. Formulations, calculations, great questions coming from Ashleigh. This is 1 Degree of Scandalous. I am Tom Zenner. This is the one and only Kato Kaelin.
Pound.
See you soon. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you liked today's content and interview with Ashleigh Banfield, make sure you check out this episode with Skip Junis, a witness who wasn't called at the OJ trial, and limo driver Alan Park has his amazing story right here.